Terry White. I am chair of the Association for Learning Environments in the UK. I also work as a professional designer, and I basically spend most of my time looking at how we can get learning-led design as the means of designing our schools. For so long, we've been designing schools at maybe sometimes the whim or what we did before or what might look good. And actually what we need to do is to think about how are we going to use the spaces for learning and teaching. And I think that what has been happening over the years is that people haven't been thinking enough about what does the space need to do, what's the curriculum, what's the approach, and how are we going to work differently with young people in the space. So actually we're tending to build for the past, not invest in building for the future, for the type of learning that our young people need. If you talk to architects and you design a brief, simplistically, some architects will listen, some will do what they've done before, some are under pressure to do things very quickly, and some architects will simply look at the space, put the walls up and say, that's the design. Educators want to start on what is it we want to do in the space. And so educators will want to say how many kids are in the space, what are they learning, what are the activities, and they'll want to talk about what's going on in the space. And sometimes those educators and researchers can link to architects who listen to that, and so they'll start off with inside out design. What do we need to do in these spaces? And let's think about how we create the walls and the acoustics and the lighting to make that work. And I think for too often, we've lost the starting point. And so we're often taking things off the shelf. We're not really looking at what it is we want to do. And I think if we did more of that and we got more dialogue and engagement, I think we would get a better end product and a better design. And I think we'd be more effective. I also think we would probably save money. When we have funding that is limited, which is a case across the world on schools and buildings, we're likely to go to the simplistic solution of designing spaces, which is basically corridors and boxes to do things in. And that would be seen to be the easiest way to do it because it's a way that's tried and tested. Now, I think if we do that, the issue is going to be that the types of learning activity that people throughout the world believe our young people need for the future, we're not going to be able to create those within those schools. So we'll have young people in secondary education not being able to design, to inquire, to do practical things, to test, to develop the skills they need for their future. Secondly, I think we're likely to have a buoyant, vibrant primary program in schools, lots of creativity, lots of inquiry. But when those young people move on to secondary education, they're likely to put into a compartmentalized approach. So I think if we're not careful, we're going to build in frustration and deny the creativity and inquiry that young people need to be future citizens. My suggestion would be that we first of all open up and improve the dialogue around experienced head teachers and researchers and get together with design professionals and say, let us find new ways of staying within the cost and the budget, staying within the time frame to build, and come up with new and exciting ways of developing spaces within schools. And I think we've got to be much more communicative. We've got to come out of our silos. And I think we've got to share and compare much more. So I think we need to get a level of debate about school design off the floor and into an area where people take an interest in it, value it, and feel more passionate about it. I'm not saying there aren't passionate architects because that isn't the case. But I think at the moment there needs to be more engagement and involvement in that process. And I think that's by sharing and collaborating and doing exchange programs and actually creating a book like Planning Learning Spaces, where actually the book is taking people through a process that they need to understand the process they need to go through in order to develop, create excellence in the design of learning spaces.